How about now? I think it's working. Hello, Ian. All right. Hello, CC. All right, let's give it a minute or two. Let people come in, and then we'll get started. You couldn't see me before? I thought it was just the audio that was the problem. See, unfortunately, when you're doing a live stream, you actually can edit a bunch of things, but you can't seem to edit your audio and your video, which is a real oversight, because then I wouldn't have had to restart my stream, but that's the way it is. All right, let's give it some time. We lost a few people, I think. Moment of silence for those who we lost in the stream issues. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. We're waiting to see if they come back. And if they don't come back, then life moves on. All right, so the chant that I'm going to do is one of my favorite suttas in all of the Nikayas. I've chanted it many times before. Page 105 in the Maggaseka chanting book, Bhara Sutta. And for those of you who don't have, well, I think if they just use the same link, it'll just show up again, no? Oh, look at this. /live streaming instead of /live. I just noticed that the maybe it's instead of /live, it's /live streaming now. They changed the URL. But anyway, let's get started with some Dhamma. So that the people who watch this in the future, they're like, why are they waiting 6 minutes and talking about technical YouTube issues? All right. Really? Took you to an old stream. Uh-oh. YouTube is messing with me again. Before, they just deleted my channels outright, but now they can't. So now they're messing with my live streams. No, I don't know. All right, let's get started. We're going to get started with the chanting, and then we'll see where we go. So, Bhara Sutta. Savatyang tatra ko bharanchavo bhikkhave desesami bharanacha bharadannancha bharanikke pancha tansunata katamocha bhikkhave bharo panchupadana kanda tissavachaniyang katame pancha Rupupandakando Vedanupadana Kando Sanyupadana Kando Sankarupadana Kando Vinyanupadana Kando Ayang Vuchati Bhikkave Bharo Katamocha Bhikkave Bharaharo Puggalo tissa vachaniyang vyavayang ayasma evang namo evang goto ayang vuchyati bhikkave bharaharo katamancha bhikkave bharadanang yayang tanha ponobhavika nandiraga sahagata tatra binandini Sayatiddang kammatanha bhavatanha vibhavatanha idang vuchyati bhikkave bharadanang katamancha bhikkave bharanikke pannang yotassayeva tanhaya asesa viraga nirodo chaggo patinissaggo muttiya nalayo idang vuchyati bhikkave bharanikke pannanti Idamavocha bhagava edang vatvana sugato attaparang etadavocha satta bharahave panchakanda bharaharo chapuggalo bharadanang dukkhang loke bharanikke panang sukang Nikkipitva gharung bharang anyang bharang anadiya samulang tanhama bhauya nityato parinubbatoti. All right, the English. At Savatthi there, the Blessed One said this, Bhikkhus, I will teach you the burden, the carrier of the burden, the taking up of the burden, and the laying down of the burden. Listen to that. And what bhikkhus is the burden? It should be said, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging. What 5? The form aggregate subject to clinging. The feeling aggregate subject to clinging. The perception aggregate subject to clinging. The volitional formations aggregate subject to clinging. The consciousness aggregate subject to clinging. This is called the burden. And what bhikkhus is the carrier of the burden? It should be said, the person. This venerable one of such a name and clan. This is called the carrier of the burden. And what bhikkhus is the taking up of the burden? It is this craving that leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. This is called the taking up of the burden. And what bhikkhus is the laying down of the burden? It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. This is called the laying down of the burden. This is what the Blessed One said, and having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said this. The 5 aggregates are truly burdens. The burden carrier is the person. Taking up the burden is suffering in the world. Laying down the burden is blissful. Having laid the heavy burden down without taking up another burden, having drawn out craving with its root, one is free from hunger, fully quenched. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. All right. So, friends, are we still on? Okay, yes, I see Adriana is also responding sadhu, so we are at least on. So, friends, welcome to Dhammapalooza. The second, last week we had our return after 5 some odd months of no Dhammapalooza, and now we are back into the rhythm. We have to get the rhythm going again so that we can get lots and lots of people. Before I dropped off the face of the YouTube earth for 5 months, we were having 16, 17, sometimes up to 20 people on our Dhammapaloozas. And so as we get back into it and we keep going, we'll build that back up again. But for now, it's just going to be most likely the small community. So, and you all know, and those of you who, for those of you who might watch this later, or who won't be a part of the stream, the Dhammapalooza is a 2-hour festival of Dhamma. We do a variety of different things here. We do some chanting, which we already did. Later on, we're going to do some meditation, guided meditation. Then in between, a lot of stuff can happen. And I like to mostly leave that up to the people here on the stream, right? If there's a, I can just read suttas all stream, that we can do that. I mean, although that can get a little bit boring maybe. But I have suttas for us to read if nobody has anything and there's no activity, right? And if anybody right now has any topics you'd like me to discuss, Buddhist topics, anything related to meditation, monasticism, you can type those topics in the chat. If anybody has any questions you'd like to ask, you could type those in the chat. And I'll give a minute or two just to see. And if nothing, then we'll move on with reading a sutta. Who's here with us? It's quiet tonight. So let us read a sutta. Now, of course, as soon as I post the sutta and start reading it, then all of a sudden comments and questions and stuff will come in. That's the way it is. But for now, we're going to read Majjhima Nikaya number 63. Cūḷamālukyasutta. Malunkya. Sorry, I missed the N there. Ian says, asking questions is one of the things I always struggle with. I'm good at internalizing what I learn, but questions are so difficult. Oh, that's okay. If you don't have any questions, then you don't ask any questions. That's the way it is. Like, I'm trying to think. I really connect with Ajahn Chah when he said that I never asked many questions. I just listened. Like, that's how I was. I mean, I never really asked, like, even when I found Bhavana and I started going, maybe I asked one question per retreat, if that. And mostly, I had been practicing for a while by that point, for some years. But it's not, asking lots of questions is not something that I've, I was, especially these days, they'll say, oh, you're meeting this certain Ajahn, you should ask him Dhamma questions. Like, I don't have any Dhamma questions for these Ajahns. I have Vinaya questions. I have plenty of Vinaya questions. I can discuss Vinaya. But in terms of Dhamma, no, I know Adriana is saying how much she loves asking questions. And that's fine. But we shouldn't try to, you shouldn't just try to ask questions just for the sake of asking questions, right? When a question arises in the mind and the mind is curious and the mind wants to know, then you ask a question, right? So that you can alleviate that curiosity. Hello, Risa. Ooh, excuse me. Okay. JRF has a question here, or maybe it's not a question. Let's see. I sit for 45 minutes a day, and when I do, I have no opinion about it. I sit and that's it. But afterwards, I'm always left with the feeling that I need to be doing more, but I am not sure what. JRF, the Noble Eightfold Path. There's many, many things to do other than sitting and following your breath, right? You have mindfulness of death. You have 4 foundations of mindfulness. You have practicing generosity. You have Cūḻamālukyasutta, the reflecting on your good deeds, right? There's lots of the whole practice is way more than just sitting. So maybe that's what's happening. Maybe your mind is saying, maybe I need to add more. Maybe I need to do more than just this. Hello, Jessica. Good to see you. Jessica, I really appreciated your brother. I enjoyed having my Thanksgiving lunch with your brother. Vegan Thanksgiving. That was interesting. Wasn't actually as bad as you might think. Unless, if you're a vegan or vegetarian, then you know. But for those of you who don't. But yes, thank you. Tell your brother again, thank you. And everything was really good in those last couple days in Denver. So I appreciated that. Adriana, how can you be nervous to be the first? You're always throwing the questions out. Oh, okay, we're getting people in here. Hello, Robert. Let's see. Let me keep reading. Oh, no. Okay, I answered JRF's question. Hey, Christine, the same way about questions. That's fine. Again, we're not trying to, you never want to force questions, right? If you don't have any questions, listening is actually better because you know what? Honestly, so many Dhamma questions they're not even really questions. They're like, I'm going to give you this like 5-paragraph thing. And then you just say if I know what I'm talking about or not. Like, that's not a question. That's like, Bante, can you in this Q&A be an editor for me? Or can you confirm or deny that what I'm thinking of is correct? That's not a question, right? So a lot of the questions in Q&As are, so it's better not to have, it's better not to kind of be wacky about it. If there's no question, there's no question. All right. See, I suspected as soon as I posted the link to the sutta, then the chat just exploded. We know why, right? What was it? Remember Adriana with our friend, the young lady from Mexico. I don't remember the name. I know Haikuit is what but remember she would say, yes, let's read a sutta. And Adriana would be like, no questions. All right. Hello, Reed. Welcome. So Adriana's saying that with her illness, it's been hard to deal with negative storylines that can arise. Sometimes I catch them, but other times it's so hard to see through it and end up acting a fool. Well, that's normal, isn't it? Like that's just the only thing you can do is try to be as mindful as possible. And you see, oh, okay, this is just a negative, storyline in my head. You can see it clearly. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna be fooled by this, right? And then something else comes up, and you're like, oh yeah, I agree with this 100%, right? You don't even question it. So maybe and sometimes it's hard to question it, or sometimes you're just in a state that's not a very mindful state, maybe because of your your mind is not really in a state of clarity because of some kind of physical issue, or you're dealing with other things that are really kind of drawing all of your attention so that you're not really mindful of what's happening. So the only thing that you can do is do your best. What can you do? Sometimes you catch them, but other times you don't. It's hard to see because you can't see. It's not even necessarily that you won't, it's just that you can't. Due to ignorance, due to delusion. You can't see it yet. You have to keep practicing with it, keep observing, keep investigating, and then over time, you'll understand and you'll master more and more. There's nothing else that you can do in that regard. At least, hey, I mean, maybe if you're an ask an arahant, maybe they might have some better wisdom for you. But in terms of me, in terms of my own understanding, there's no like silver bullet there. It's just, it's just about continuing to develop and hone your mindfulness and your awareness and your insight, right? Why did I not see this, right? So it comes after it arises, and after you realize you basically were fooled by it, question yourself, why didn't I see it? What were the signs that this was arising, right? How can I see this better before it takes control over me next time? Like a ninja sneaking up behind you. When the ninja grabs you, it's too late, right? The trick is when you hear, you hear the ninja or whatever, you hear the thing sneaking up behind you before it gets to you, and you turn, it's like, right? You even think about Mara. Mara is sneaking up. And you go, I see you, Mara, right? So you have to kind of try to trace the steps back, try to, really investigate and contemplate, okay, this arose. Why and how did it arise? And how did it take me unawares, right? And if you question and you investigate that, then you know better for next time. All right. So welcome those who have joined. Oh, hey, Dave. Good to see you. So we jumped up to, it's showing 10 on my thing. So we've jumped up some people, some who aren't in the chat, I believe. So welcome. A ninja metaphor. Yeah, well, I mean, the Buddha used war metaphors, right? You use what you know. I've read more than one book on ninjutsu in my days. So any kind of, when you think of sneaking, that's what I think of. All right. Yeah, Generosity Ninja. Well, Generosity Ninja is perfect to get over like the kind of attachment you might have to giving something. Like you can see that if you really observe your mind, like when you're giving something, you can observe that almost always there's going to be a part of your mind that is expecting something or wanting something, right? And so when you're a Generosity Ninja, that just cuts it all out. So Generosity Ninja, for those of you who don't know what the heck we're talking about, this is when you do something good for somebody and they never know that you did it. Right? I always tell the story of, which is also a good story about mindfulness. I tell this story when I'm talking about generosity and with mindfulness because towards the end of my career in Child Protective Services, when I was a foster and adoptive home recruiter, This is from the day of the biggest event I ever created. I mean, like 50 vendors, like, so 50, I got 50 organizations in one spot. Like, I did this ridiculously huge event all by myself for the most part. And it was the day of, and I'm running around getting sure we got to get the catering going, yada, yada, all these things. And I'm in my office and I'm running around busy, the event's later on in a couple hours, and in comes this father, and he's got like 4 kids, and like these kids are just like, one adult to 4 kids. That adult is outnumbered. That adult, especially when they're younger kids, and they were all younger kids. So I kind of felt sorry for this father coming in with all these kids. And I was really fit. I never took the elevator, and not at that point I was like, those are my good days. Those are my GoRuck CrossFit, like, really endurance event days where I was just running upstairs and down, just with no effort, just going up and downstairs. So I wasn't going to take the elevator. But as I was passing the elevator, a thought came to my mind real quick. Why don't I just press the button for him? Right? So that by the time he got to the elevator, herding these kids, that it would open and he could just get them right in. Right? And so that's what I did. And it took a split second out of my day to do something for this guy. And he didn't see it because he was on the other side of the elevator. So he's coming around. I'm coming. I just go bloop, and I just go right back up the stairs. Right? And so I thought, this is okay. I moved to the monastery like 7 years ago. So this is like 8 years ago. And I still remember that to this day as a good deed that I took a split second out of my day just to do something good for somebody, right? And I had the mindfulness to be able to do it. But this is generosity ninja. So I was like, I thought, oh, I kind of like that. Because I like the sneaky, because, those of you who've heard me talk a million times, I became a master sneaker of food, right? Going down at night and my home when I was a teenager, making sure that all my steps didn't make any noise. When I opened the cabinet, I didn't make any noise. Getting the food didn't make any noise. And then I would make sure that, it wasn't too obvious that food was taken and all. So I spent all of this unskillful development of sneakiness growing up, because of all my food issues, right? And so now I was like, okay, now let me try to use that for good. Let me try to be sneaky for good, for generosity, right? For good skillfulness ways. And so then that's where the whole idea of the generosity ninja came up. All right. Well, and the other thing about the it's not necessarily even, you might be giving something really you're not expecting like later on they're going to give you a favor, but you'll expect some kind of gratitude, right? Like you give a homeless person a sandwich and they say, I don't want this sandwich, or you watch them throw them away, right? You think, well, I can't believe this horrible person, blah, 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 blah. Because they wanted money instead or whatever. Or you open the door for somebody going into a store and they just walk right in with their phone. They don't even pay. You don't exist. The door just magically opened wide, and you just, and you're like, who raised these people? Were they raised in a barn or something like that, right? You let somebody in traffic and they don't give a wave, and you get really agitated, these kind of things. And so even these little that's an expectation. That's a string attached to your generosity, right? When really it has what that person does with what you've done for them, whether they acknowledge it or not, whether they use your gift skillfully or not, it makes no difference. It makes no difference on the fact that you did a good deed, that you practice generosity. No difference. Right. And so, but you getting attached to that extra stuff, that is wanting something. That is expecting something. And as I always say, expectations equals suffering. So this is important. And so when you're generosity ninja, only you know, right? Just like the Buddha says that you can never escape from any of your deeds, right? Even if you go to the woods and it's just you in the woods, you know what you did, right? The Buddha tells us this, right? And so it's the same thing, right? Even if you're like, when you're practicing Sila Nusati, recollecting your good deeds, you're like, oh yeah, I remember I was sneaky there. I did that good thing for them and they never knew and they never will. I'm going to take it to my grave. Right? Like that kind of stuff. That goes against the defilements, right? Something that Ajahn Chah was always big on, always talking about. How do you go against the defilements? Generosity ninja. Donna Shinobi. Robert, I love it. I love Donna Shinobi. That's great. Donna Shinobi. Adriana says, it's crazy. Sometimes I am so surprised to see the ugly wanting expectations come up, even when I think my intentions for Dana are absolutely wholesome. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like there are levels of motivation and they go deep, right? Like as you become more mindful over the years, as you practice and really investigate your mind, you'll see levels. At the top level, you've kind of convinced yourself that I am so good, I am so compassionate, I'm giving of myself for this. But then there's the bottom part that's like, yeah, I'm gonna get this. It's, like you don't see that part because you're deluded. but and that's not to say it's always there. It really might not be, but it also might be there too. Right? You have to basically assume that because you're a being that has greed, hatred, and delusion, that because of the delusion, there's going to be some other ulterior motives, or not even, maybe not intention. So this is important, right? This is not your intention, but there might be other motives and other impulses that you're not aware of. Right? But you're only aware of the skillful. This is why, as we read last week, reflecting on your actions before, during, and after. This is why compassion always has to go with wisdom, so that you act skillfully and minimize harm to yourself and others. I know. Christine says, "Is there a word in Pali for feeling good about practicing skillfully?" Yeah, sukha. Sukha would be that word, and maybe even piti. But no, so like Reed says, Sila Nusati. So Sila Nusati is the the act of contemplating on your good deeds. But the word is sukha. Sukha is that happiness, contentment that arises when there's no restlessness or remorse. You see this in the jhana formulations, right? Piti and sukha are in these jhanas because there's no restlessness and remorse at that time. Yes, opposite of dukkha. Exactly. Su is good, pleasant. Du is not good, unpleasant. Right? So sukha, pleasant. Dukkha, unpleasant. Of course, that's dukkha in the more mundane translation. Douse is 100% correct here. Want to feel good for doing wholesome so that you're more compelled to do wholesome. Simple. Exactly. Read. Perfect. Anguttara Nikaya 462, there is the Anavajjasukha, which is happiness of blamelessness. This is exactly what this is the succinct way of saying what I took a paragraph to say. You all know that succinctness is not one of my strong suits. Yes, that is precise. The Christmas truce. Yes. Yeah, bliss. I have seen people. Bliss is an interesting English word though, because I've seen translations of both piti and sukha as bliss. So it can kind of get a little confusing to use that term. That's the only issue I would have with bliss. I trying to also translate it as a blameless bliss, which is what the response that I was responding to. And Robert, what you're seeing there is that's humanity, right? This is the thing that I talk about. Like, humans are both creation and destruction, just like nature, right? Humans are capable of some of the most amazingly good things and the most amazingly bad things. Right? This is why I say, like, all of us in our past lives have done, have been Hitler and Mother Teresa, right? We've been, I don't know, Stalin and Gandhi. I don't know. Use your word. Your best and your worst. But we've all. That's because we're capable. Like Alexander Solzhenitsyn says that the line between good and evil is not you know us and them, or internal external. He says the line between good and evil crosses each person's heart. This means that each person has within them the capability of really good and really bad, right? And so you can see, even amongst the Christmas truces, if you're I've war history and war stuff is always something I've always loved my whole life. So I've read and watched documentaries and learned about all kinds of wars all throughout history, and and you see these kind of events, right? So war we think of as like the worst of humanity, right? Like this is but in that worst of humanity is also the best of humanity, like comradeship and sacrifice and generosity and all of these things, right? So this is why, if you have a kind of one-sided view of humanity, like humans should be, humans are a virus and they're evil and we should all be destroyed and the universe would be better without humans. Really? I don't know. It seems to me that humans are basically the universe. Humans are basically nature. We're creation and destruction, right? We're an animal, a part of nature. That's what we are. So, this is why it's so important to always keep, when you're dealing with somebody, right? And most of you've heard me talk about this a million times before. When you are dealing with a person, another human being, right? They could be on the opposite side of a war from you. They could be the opposite political spectrum than you. They could be from another country. They could be from another socioeconomic level as you. They could be whatever, criminal, whatever. It doesn't, whatever delineations, whatever categorizations, that when you're that, the person that you are engaging with, the number one thing you always need to keep in front of your mind is that they're human beings. That's the number one thing, right? This whole, it's a very human thing to other somebody. It's very easy. It's very easy to do it. Like the newest othering I've seen is this, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, right? Like some of the language that I've seen politicians and people use in that is the same language that anybody who watches anything about World War II and Nazis and Jews and stuff, you see that language there. It's the same language, right? It's the language of us versus them. It's the language of this person is less than. This person is not a human being, right? This person is an animal. That is dangerous rhetoric. So when you always remember, no matter who you're talking to, right? I sat across the table from a grandfather who raped his granddaughter. I had a client who, most of you have heard me talk about this before. Yeah, I've had a client who was the leader of the Latin Kings, and which is the biggest Latino gang. Maybe not anymore. I think that one, and not NC-13. I can't remember. It's been a while since I had to think about this. Maybe that other Latino gang is the king now. But anyway, so I've been around people, all kinds of people, everywhere, right? And that has been my number one thing, is they're a human first, right? You might have to be assertive with them, and you might have to disagree with them or be on the other side from them, but they're a human first. That's the most important thing. If you keep that, then you can have things like the Christmas truce happen, right? If you keep that, then you can be somebody who is in the middle of this divisive stupidity and us versus them. And you say, I don't want to, I'm not getting involved. I'm not feeding this. This is stupid, right? And you can actually say, this is another human being. I'm not going to dehumanize them, and I don't want to be dehumanized, right? That's so important. So important is always to remember, no matter who you meet, right? Even if they, authoritarian people, they say, I want you to, you should do this and XYZ. they're a deluded human being, just like you. Right? And then you decide what you need to do skillfully. But first, is there a human being? That's so important. That's number one. That should be what they call, the fancy term is called, like in scientific and like the PhDs, they'll use the term axiomatic presuppositions. So it means axiomatic means like we're starting from here. This is the basic truth that we're starting from. We're going to assume this is true. Right? And so if you start with your axiom is this is another human being, not like some kind of like lizard alien or whatever, something like that. This is another human being, right? That's my axiomatic presupposition. Now, for what happens after that, we don't know, but this is another human being. All right, just checking the chat. So what are we at here? Let's read a sutta. And then, because it's a good sutta. And then we will do our guided meditation, and that will probably call it for the night. We'll have maybe a couple minutes. Because we're almost at the hour mark. So let's read. All right.
Yes, this is a...
Okay. All right, Reed, have a good one. Thanks for coming on for when you can. Hello, Andrew. Welcome. Okay, so the Shorter Discourse with Malunkya. This is quite a famous one, actually. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi and Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Then the Venerable Malunkya was in private retreat. This thought came to him. There are several convictions that the Buddha has left undeclared. He has set them aside and refused to comment on them. Poor Malunkya is just like so many of us who want the Buddha to tell us exactly about everything. Right? We want the Buddha to tell us about all the other leaves on the ground instead of just the leaves in it. We don't want to hear about the leaves in your hand. That's like boring. I want to hear about all the other leaves, right? So he's thinking about the Buddha has not told us about all these things. For example, the cosmos is eternal or not eternal, finite or infinite. The soul and the body are the same thing, or are they different things? After death, a realized one exists or does not exist. Or both exist and doesn't exist, or neither exists nor doesn't exist. The Buddha does not give me a straight answer on these points. I don't like that, and I do not accept it. Oh, boy. This is great. I love this because this is so fun. This speaking of Q&As, this is what reminds me of Q&As a lot too. Why don't you tell us? I need to know exactly how karma works and exactly to the nth degree of exactly how these things work. Right? You see the people, because that's our mindset. That we want to know exactly. We need to know exactly. I was that way too. But now I follow the Buddha's advice. I don't go too crazy about these things. Okay, so going on. Ah, good question. How can it? So there's a, at the time of the Buddha, you see this, it's a what do they call it? Four-pronged questioning technique, right? Exists, doesn't exist, both exists and doesn't exist at the same time, and neither exists nor doesn't exist at the same time. And this is a very complicated thing. I honestly don't know that I have it clear enough in my head to really explain it in detail. I think like Bhante Analayo has written a thing about this, really explaining it. But even still, like it's one of those things where, if I remember correctly, he used a lot of commentary and there's a lot of kind of piecing things together. But this is like things where, this is part of the ancient Indian tradition, that you kind of have to wonder, like, what the heck are they talking about? Right. But then as you understand, and as you read more, you get to know a little bit more, understand, like, a lot of times the exist and doesn't exist, if I remember correctly, what my mind is kind of coming up is like talking about like very refined states, very refined mental states, very refined birth states, kind of stuff like that. I could be totally wrong. It's been a bunch of years since I read that Analayo thing. It actually might be something good to read again, because nobody's questioned that in a long time for me, so I haven't had to explain it. Dow says that counts as the fetter of doubt, right? Focusing one's time, effort, and things that are pointless to ponder, investigate, and such. It can be doubt. It could also be craving, just like simple, like craving to know, right? Intellectual craving. So, okay, so let's continue on with the sutta. I don't like that. I do not accept it. I'll go to him and ask him about this. If he gives me a straight answer on any of these points, I will lead the spiritual life under him. If he does not give me a straight answer on any of these points, I shall resign in the training and return to a lesser life. Let's see. Can we? This I think is the very first Dhammapalooza spammer. We're getting popular. This is amazing. All right, I what you called it? Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Did Adriana get in? I did hide. I didn't see a ban. Can I remove? I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, I also did. Okay, Adriana, good. Thanks. This is an auspicious Dhammapalooza that we have our first spammer. Because I was kind of feeling, there was always a part of me that was feeling a little bit sad that it just, it wasn't even worth it. We're not even going to try to spam this guy's Dhammapalooza. Who cares about him? All right. Well, this is important thing. Like, this is, I learned way back. I'm an old school gamer, like literally from the beginning. And you learn like the first MMORPGs, the first online games, right? You learn like you don't feed the trolls. You just don't. You have fun with it. Like when I was doing in the early days of like the old days of on the Buddhist Center on Second Life, right? That would happen sometimes. Like this is like, you know, just on chat, but on Second Life, you guys know it's a virtual world. So there would be somebody who would just like pop into the into the Deer Park. Yes, Ultima Online. Don't Ultima Online. But anyway, somebody would just pop into the Deer Park and they'd run around naked and they'd do all kinds of, they'd become all kinds of beasts. It's pretty funny. I like that's the thing. Like you can't troll me. I have fun with these kind of things. I enjoy it. It's like, okay, I'll just, you know, whatever. I'll just pop the button, you know. It doesn't bother me. It's like, you know, my nephew growing up, he would just like scream like, ah! And like my parents and my sister, they'd be driven nuts by it, and I just like giggle. It's like, yeah, you're not bothering me, kid. That doesn't work. Now go to your room. You know, stuff like that. That's called being anti-fragile, right? If somebody comes and, you know, like comes up to you and is like calls you names and all these kind of things, and if you like fall apart by that, that doesn't help you. That you're just causing yourself suffering from doing that, right? Dao says, make use of trolls for practice. Metta for trolls. Exactly. Exactly. Yes. So that's how you do it. You have fun with it. Right? All right, Robert, have a good one. So let's continue on now that we've had our interesting troll diversion. So Malunkya is like, okay, I'm gonna confront the Buddha now, and if he doesn't give me a good answer, I'm not gonna be a monk. Can you see this guy's how deluded this guy is already? This guy already starts deluded. He's like, you better tell me these answers, or else I'm gonna not be a monk anymore. Then in the late afternoon, Malunkya came out of retreat and went to the Buddha. He bowed, sat down to one side, and told the Buddha of his thoughts. Then he continued, if the Buddha knows that the cosmos is eternal, please tell me. If you know the cosmos is not eternal, tell me. If you don't know whether the cosmos is eternal or not, then it is a straightforward, simply say, I neither know nor see. See, this is another thing as well, right? This is somebody basically saying, if you're an awakened Buddha, you should probably know these things and you should tell us. Maybe you're not really awakened if you're not going to tell us. Right? That's a direct what's the word? Not question. I mean, it is, but it's a direct attack on the authority of an awakened being, basically. Right? So this guy is he's not doing very well here by doing this. You know, it's not gonna end well for him in this regard. So if you know that the world is finite or infinite, that the soul and the body are the same thing, or that they are different things, that after death they realize one exists or doesn't exist, or both exist and doesn't exist, or neither exists nor doesn't exist, then please tell me. If you know any of these things, then it is simple. If you know any of these things, then it is straightforward to simply say, oh, if you don't know, I'm sorry, any of these things, then just say, I neither know or see. Now, here's the Buddha's response. This is a great response. The first thing off the bat, this is the Buddha's mic drop, like when we're reading the Samyutta Nikaya, right? Going through the Samyutta Nikayas in the Dhamma, Suttas Monday on the Discord, right? All of the like the devas come and they say a line and the Buddha responds with his line and drops the mic, right? So here's the Buddha's mic drop to this guy. This guy goes through this whole big stupid thing in the beginning. And so he says, come, Malunkya he says, what, Malunkya? Did I ever say to you, come, lead the spiritual life under me, and I will declare these things to you? The Buddha's like, hey, did I ever force you to do this? Did I ever say, hey, come in? See, this is another thing. This is also very important. The Buddha says that he teaches with the teaching of an open palm, not a closed fist. Meaning that there's no secret. It's not like you come in and then you become a newbie, and then once you reach level 10 in our organization, then I'll teach you this secret. And then when you reach level 20, I'll teach you this secret. The Buddha doesn't do that. There's no hidden teachings, right? Which is why, you read this in the suttas and you see a lot of the later traditions, a lot of the later writings say like the Buddha hid this teaching up in, then it gets a little weird that way. But anyway, so the Buddha is saying, I don't teach with a closed fist. Everything I teach is right here, right? So the Buddha is saying, did I tell you that I was going to tell you these things? Right? And so, of course, he says, no, sir, no, Bhante, you did not say this. Or did you ever say to me, sir, I will lead the spiritual life under the Buddha, and the Buddha will declare these things to me? No, sir, he says. So it seems that I did not say to you, come lead the spiritual life, and I will declare these things. And you never said to me, I will only lead the spiritual life if you will declare these things to me. In that case, you silly man. So this is great, right? Like Bhante Sujato is being very kind here. This word, it's mogha purisa. Mogha purisa means a stupid or useless person. It's like, this is like really like a ditz on this person. In that case, you stupid or useless person, are you really in the position to be abandoning anything? So it's like, in this case, are you really in the position to stop, abandon the holy life? Is that really going to be helpful to you? So the Buddha says, suppose someone were to say this, I will not lead the spiritual life under the Buddha until the Buddha declares to me that the cosmos is eternal, or that the cosmos is not eternal, such and such. We're going to, we've heard these things. Now we're going to come up to a simile that you've probably all heard. You've heard this simile before. That would still remain undeclared by the realized one, and meanwhile, that person would die. So here's the simile. Suppose a man was struck by an arrow thickly smeared with poison. His friend and colleagues, relatives and kin, would get a field surgeon to treat him. But the man would say, I won't pull out this arrow as long as I don't know whether the man who wounded me was an aristocrat, a Brahmin, a merchant, or a worker. So that's the caste system. Right? He'd say, I won't pull out this arrow as long as I don't know the following things about the man who wounded me. I want his name. I want his clan, whether he's tall, short, or medium, whether his skin is black, brown, or tawny, what village, town, or city he's from. I won't pull out this arrow as long as I don't know whether the bow that wounded me is made of wood or cane, whether the bowstring is made of swallowwort fiber, sun hemp fiber, sinew, sansevieria fiber, or spurge fiber, whether the shaft is made of a bush or a plantation tree, whether the shaft is fitted with feathers from a vulture, a heron, a hawk, a peacock, or a stork, whether the shaft was bound with sinews of a cow, a buffalo, a swamp deer, or a gibbon, and whether the arrowhead was spiked, razor-tipped, barbed, made of iron or a calf's tooth or lancet shaped. That man would still not have learned any of these things, and meanwhile they die. Right? This is such a great simile. In the same way, suppose someone were to say, I will not lead the spiritual life under the Buddha until the Buddha declares these things, etc., etc. That would still remain undeclared by me, the realized one, and meanwhile that person would die. It's not true that if there were the view the cosmos is eternal, there would be living the spiritual life. It's not true that if there were the view the cosmos is not eternal, there would be living of the spiritual life. When there is the view that the cosmos is eternal or that the cosmos is not eternal, there is rebirth, there is old age, there is death, there is sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. So the Buddha is saying here is, if you have the view that the cosmos is eternal or the cosmos is not eternal, guess what? You're still in samsara. You're going to have old age, sickness, and death. Have fun with that, right? And it is the defeat of these things in this very life that I advocate. Right? So the Buddha says that he teaches the middle way between eternalism and annihilationism, right? He teaches the middle way, right? The middle way is the only way past these things. If you're going to go with one or the other, then you're stuck in samsara. And it is the defeat of these things in this very life that I advocate. It's not true that if it were, so it goes the same way, that it goes through all the rest of the things. Where any of these views, when there are any of these views, there is rebirth, old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. And it is the defeat of these things in this very life that I advocate. So Malunkya, you should remember what I have not declared as undeclared, and what I have declared as declared. And what have I not declared? I have not declared the following, and it goes through the same stuff. And why haven't I declared them? Because they aren't beneficial or relevant to the fundamentals of the spiritual life. They don't lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. As a matter of fact, they lead to the opposite. Views and fighting and running after thesis. Thesi? Maybe thesi is the plural of theses. Thesi, right? That's what they lead to. They lead up to the taking up of rods and canes. All of this silliness. That's why I haven't declared them. And what have I declared? I declare the following. These four things. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. And why have I declared these things? Because they are beneficial and relevant to the fundamentals of the spiritual life. They lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. That's why I have declared them. So Malunkya, you should remember what I have not declared as undeclared and what I have declared as declared. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, Venerable Malunkya was happy with what the Buddha said. Very good. So Malunkya disillusionment, stupidity was fixed. Very good sutta. Good night, JRF. And also, it might be time for Douse to go too, because it's meditation time. And it's also well past his time. Usually he's in bed 15 minutes ago. Yes, well, that's exactly what it is, right? There is the Buddhist simile of drinking poison. Yeah, exactly. Uh-oh. Douse's sleep schedule is off these days. So he sleeps during the day, and then he comes out of the coffin at night. Even though it's 3:30 in the morning, or with where he is right now. He's wide awake. No? I don't know. All right. That's just a vampire. No, he's just hey, I remember those days. I was a vampire. Uh-oh. Douse only needs a couple hours of sleep a night. All right. So why don't we do our guided meditation, right? And so that'll leave us about 10 minutes after to do our final stuff. Okay, friends. Prepare for the meditation by taking a stable and comfortable posture, whether on a cushion or a chair, whatever works best for you. Close your eyes, and let's begin the work of bringing our awareness from the external to the internal. We'll take a few minutes to scan through the body, starting with the toes. Bring your awareness to your toes. By bringing awareness, I mean to come into awareness, to come into contact with whatever sensation and feelings you find in that part of the body. For the toes, you can try to wiggle them. That usually is a good way of bringing your awareness right to the toes and the sensation there. And as we're going through, you can prompt yourself if you're having trouble by asking your mind, what do I see? What do I feel? We do the scan for two reasons. The first is to be able to slowly and more easily bring our awareness from the external to the internal, moving from the gross to the subtle. And the second is to make sure that our bodies are set up in a stable and comfortable position. Bring your awareness up through your ankles, into your calves. What is the feeling of the calves pressing against the chair or the cushion? Bring your awareness up through the knees into the thighs. What is the feeling of the thighs pressing against the chair or cushion? As you're scanning through, try to see if there's any small imbalances in your posture or any small feelings of discomfort in the part of the body you're scanning through. And when you find them, see if you can adjust your posture to make it more balanced and comfortable. Now is the time to move around and adjust. Once we start the breathing, we want to try to minimize our movements for as long as possible, to be as still as possible. Bring your awareness up through the hips and pelvis. Check the balance of the hips and pelvis. How the hips and pelvis are positioned will affect the spine and the upper body. The lower body is a foundation, the foundation for your posture. If you have an unstable foundation, what is lying on top of that foundation will crumble. So let's your lower body be in a position that is as stable and comfortable, balanced as possible. And when you're ready, move your awareness up the spine, through the abdomen and the chest. Check to see that the spine is in its neutral position. The upper body is not leaning or slouching here and there. Bring your awareness to your shoulders. Check that they're hanging loosely, not crunched up and tight. Bring your awareness down through your elbows and hands. Check to make sure that they are in a comfortable and stable position. The elbows and hands can have an effect on the upper body's posture. Check to make sure that they're not causing leaning and slouching of the spine. And finally, bring your awareness to the head. The head is like the tip of the pyramid, the triangle, starting from the foundation of the lower body, the spine, and the head. If the lower and upper bodies are in a stable posture, then the head will rest comfortably with the chin parallel to the floor. When you've set your body up in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, we do not wish to manipulate or control the breath in any way. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Simply begin by being aware that this body is breathing in and breathing out. As you follow the breath, moving in and out, you become distracted. Your mind will decide to go across the world or the galaxy, to the past or the future. An external distraction may arise, like sounds. When you fully recognize that you have lost your mindfulness, first acknowledge that. Marshal your mindfulness. Practice letting go of the distraction by neither attaching to it nor trying to push it away. And then return to the breath. However many times you get distracted, acknowledge, let go, and return over and over. The breath is home base. It's always there waiting for you, ready for you to be with it, to investigate it. So always return. Every once in a while, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more calm and peaceful or not? As your mind becomes more calm and peaceful, settles down, you may begin to notice further, more subtle characteristics of the breath. You may begin to see that sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. Try to observe these changes, this impermanence in the breath. Watch as the breath flows and changes in and out. As your mind continues to calm down, the breath gets more subtle, and you start to see even more deeply the various characteristics of the breath. Try to stay with the breath from the beginning to the end. Follow the whole cycle of the breath. The body breathes in, and the pause while the lungs are full of air. The body breathes out, and the pause while the lungs are empty of air. Try to do your best to follow the whole cycle of the breath with all its changes and movement. Stay with the breath as much as you can, and always return back. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Slowly open your eyes. Come back from the internal to the external, being aware of the room, the live stream, and the few of us left. Let's see, is Adriana one of the 3 people, it says? So we had a precipitous drop-off for meditation. We started it later than we normally do too, I guess. And then there were 3. Well, 4 with me. Yeah. All right. So I think we could call it. I'll do my, announcements, and we'll do our sharing of merits, and then we'll call it a night. So my hands actually went a little numb too. That's how it goes. Yeah. Okay, friends. So this is the end of Dhammapalooza. I'm back to full swing. In the mornings, 8 a.m. Eastern, live on this channel for a half hour. We always do morning monastery experience. Right now, I'm doing them every day. I don't know if that's going to happen in the future, but right now, morning monastery experience, 8 a.m. For a half hour of chanting, reading suttas, or chanting suttas, really. And a little thought of the day, a little Dhamma teaching for maybe like 5 or 6 minutes. And so that's every morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. And I have some other things coming up, a few, little ideas. I'm going to be making some videos. So keep an eye out on the channel. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, click the bell, do all that kind of stuff. So that you can see when I do stuff like that and new things come out. Okay, friends. So let us do our sharing of merits. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, sukha patta chani sukha, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata cha amehi, sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu, sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta chabumata, deva naga mahiddhika, punyang tang anumoditva, charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, yakas, and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. Until next time, may you have a very spiritually successful and peaceful week. Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy. Until next time.